All right, in this last video, we're going to finally use our function module and do our calculation and output that to the repeating panel. Okay, so what we're going to do, I think in the last video, we went ahead and cast this into a float, did some calculations on it, and sent it in as a string. We're going to undo that. All we're going to do is just save it as a interest rate, get rid of the float, and get rid of this calculation. And then we don't need this anymore to make it a string. It's already going to be a string, so get rid of that also. Okay. And then at that point, it will just, if we put in 6%, it will just stay as a whole number. And then when we get it into the actual database here, when we pull it out of the data table, so let's go into our data table and let's just change this one to a 5% and this one here to a 6%. Okay. And then once we pull it out as text, it will cast or convert over here into an interest rate. So what we want to do is now we want to get the stuff out of the database and convert it to the correct thing. So the first one is a deposit, and that, let's just make that a float, and let's just convert everything that's going out of this into a float and put it into deposit. Do the same thing, so we can get rid of that there. Do the same thing for interest rate. So for interest rate, it should be a float. Cast the whole thing into that. Get rid of interest rate. And then do for starting amount, it should be a float. Like so. And then finally, period count should be an int. And do that. So it will get it all out. It'll convert them all over. And then they'll be working correctly. But what we do want to do is convert interest rate to decimal, then monthly. Okay, so to do that, we could just come down here and create one here called monthly interest rate is equal to interest rate divided by 12 divided by 100, which would convert it to a decimal and then also a 12 month. And then instead of interest rate here, we would just do interest rate like that. So it would use the monthly interest rate. Okay. So let's take that and put it here. And of course, we want to do something like get inputs like that. Okay. We're going to return back future value, interest earned, starting amount. Why don't we just return back two of them? Okay. Interest earned and future value. Okay. And then when we go back to our grid, go to our design down here, let's just add one more label here and call it interest earned. So LB interest earned. Okay. And see what that does. So now when we're in our function, or actually when we're in our code, we call our function, right? So we say for this button, okay, for this button click, here we want to go I think it's trans ID is equal to self.item.get ID. And that's going to get our tran ID. And that's when we said transaction ID. That's what it's going to get that. Then we're going to get two things back from this function, right? So we're going to get future value and interest earned. Okay. So we're going to get both those back. So let's come over here and say we're going to get both of those back. So we want a place to put them. And then let's call our function. So we remember we used up here, we called it func. So we'll just say func dot, and it's this calculate future value, and we pass in trans ID. Okay. So func dot tells us to go to this import, grab the one called calculate future value. And if you go down here, that's what we called it here. And the only thing we pass in is trans ID. Then it goes through, grabs it all from the database using this database, casts it into a float, does all the calculations, goes through the whole thing, and returns back both interest earned and future value. So then when we're back over here to future grid, all we need to do now is set those, or set that answer, right? So we could do something as simple as self.lb, and interest earned is equal to, okay, and then it's just interest earned. Okay, but what part of this label do we want to do to? We got to remember that part too. So, and it's text, set it equal to interest earned. And you know, we always want to use F. So let's just do F, and then cast it into our, like so. Now let's do the same thing here. Self.lb total dot text is equal to F, and we want to go future value. And then the benefit of doing it this way is that we can go something like dot to F. Okay, just like we've normally done. So dot to F, we'll make it 2 decimal places. Okay, let's just see if this works. But those are the 3 things you'd need to do in the update. Okay, so you grab the ID off the actual off this grid here. You'll grab the ID. You'll send that ID in. It'll get it out of the data table. It'll do the calculation. It'll return back these 2 items, and then it'll put the answers into both of these items here. And theoretically, that's how it should work. Let's see if it works. So we'll go ahead and run it. And let's just do a calculation on this one. And it looks like it did do something. It said 32,000 right here. Okay. So if we stop it, we can come, because we did it this way, we can also add a $sign, which is nice. And then we can also be, say something like future value with an equal sign. And over here, interest earned with an equal sign. Let's just see if that looks any better. Calculate future value, interest earned. I could do a couple other things. Maybe we can make these smaller to make them bigger, or we can just put FV and interest. Okay, let's just try that and see if that makes it look just a little bit better. Future value. And over here will be interest. And let's run that. Okay. I think for what we're trying to do, I think that is exactly what we're trying to do. Okay. Just trying to keep it very simple. It does all the calculations. We can delete, we can add. Let's just add another one. Let's just double check that it works. So 10 over 10 periods, present value is $10,000. That's $100,000, $10,000 at a yearly interest rate. We should probably fix that of like 12%. And every month we put in another $100, add it to the database. Well, that's kind of cool. When you click add to the database, it gets rid of the calculations. So this one here, let's do the calculation. Future value will be $12,000. You'll get $1,000 in interest over those 10 years. Not bad. Okay, I will post this as the last video of this short series. If you have any questions, be sure to hit me up.